Oh my gosh, thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate your time. So we'll try our best not to waste it. And I just want to do a special shout out to our friend Randall here, who is the only reason we're here today, because today is normally an off week. But I know that it was important to him that we review the listing package, and so that's what we're going to do today. So thank you. So we can all thank Randall.
Thank you, Randall.
His special request.
No problem.
So I've got a listing agreement pulled up, and I thought we'll walk through it much like we did the purchase agreement a couple of weeks ago. So let's get into it. And so I thought what I would do is show you an agreement that is already done. Basically, it's already filled out. And we'll walk through it because I think that'll give you a better view of what it will look like once you've done it. So you guys are familiar with your RAIN login dashboard, and probably by now you know where to find Matrix or your home search experience. Over on the right is where I go. Some people go over here. Either one works just fine. I tend to drift over to the right-hand side. And in this case, we're going to click on Instanet. And when we do that, it opens up our agent dashboard, which looks something like this. So this happens to be my personal agent dashboard. And so you can see it logs all of the transactions in there that you've created, and all of the documents and everything that you've had signed. It houses here in Authentisign. So every form that is associated with your transactions is here in Forms. And so you can organize this if you wanted to. If you wanted to change the layout, move things around, you could certainly do that. I've got it set up for me the way I like it, but it is editable. So in this case, I thought what we would do is take one of my most recent listings, this 15079 Sundew, and we'll look at the forms that were involved in that transaction. Okay, and so what we've done is we've gone from that transaction to, so here's our dashboard, to our transaction dashboard. And again, this is also editable, so you could rearrange the layout if you wanted to. And in here are all of the forms associated with this specific transaction. And if you look to the bottom of some of these boxes, there's a hot link here, and this says go to forms. This says go to details. This one here says go to documents, and the checklist, which we don't normally use. So in this case, we're going to go to forms so that we can see every form that I have associated with this particular transaction. And so when we do that, of course, we have this list. And the reason we have this list is because Stacia has gone in and created templates for us to select depending on the type of transaction we're creating. And in this case, obviously, it was a standard listing template that I selected. And so all of these forms were already in here. They're already in the package. And so that's really, really important to know. I don't expect that you should go and pull these forms together manually. They have been all brought together. So we'll kick things off with the standard listing agreement. And much like the standard purchase agreement, we start off by identifying the parties to the contract and the property description and or location. And so some of the items in the listing agreement will be duplicative of the purchase agreement. Some disclosures, for example. Yes, ma'am.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Because you're going into it already completed,
Yes.
but that information can be added on a different screen quicker.
Oh, what do you mean?
So save and exit.
Oh, see, I don't use that form.
I know you don't, but
I
other
don't-
people could,
I don't teach them to use that form.
but I do. So if you go to details and
Yeah.
contacts, you can add the information already.
Yeah,
Like detail, you can put in the street name, the address, the price, the list and end date. And it auto-populates it for you.
And all the other forms.
And it puts it on all the forms for you in that one spot. And then if you go to contacts, you can actually put in your clients, all their information, their name and their email address, so you don't have to do it later.
Stacia, now that you mentioned that, have you ran into problems though? I have when you're putting in your clients' names. For some reason, a while back, I was doing a contract and I did it through that template. And one of the names would not go on the same line as the buyer's name. It was two buyers.
Because if you've had them in the system before, so like this person right here, she's a seller, but maybe before they were a buyer.
Oh, okay.
And you use the same contact info, like
Yeah,
right here, when you hit add, you can add from an existing contact. And
right,
if you pick that person, like, I don't know, I'm gonna humor myself and click this one, it says seller. But really you wanted it, no, wait, let's go to this buyer guy. This buyer guy right here,
mhm,
and you hit add, it'll put it on the buyer line. But you have to change that person from a seller or a buyer to the
back to a
whatever
buyer, yeah,
you're doing. So in here, you have to make sure this says seller or buyer. Or
right,
if you're a listing agent, you have to make sure that it says for you to be the listing agent. And if you pull in information from a previous listing, it's gonna include all of that information from before. You don't
right,
want to do that. You only want to
Right.
start a listing from Realist or from scratch, which works just as well.
yeah, because I remembered going back trying to to correct it, and it was a nightmare. So,
Yeah, so it would be in here, and you would have to make sure that there's only one buyer or one
Right.
seller. So in
Okay.
this case, right here is probably how he started it, and that's why it's capitalized and backwards. But then with the contract, because he hand typed it in, it went this way.
Right,
So you would start it at Realist and then go to details.
Yeah, it's probably what he did.
yeah,
I don't know what he did. I never know what he does. But this is where you would fix it to make sure that it says buyer, seller,
mhm,
whatever the case is. Oh, in the end, you can put their email addresses in here, so you don't have to worry about it later. Like when you go to signings,
right.
and then it auto populates.
Cool, you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right.
She hides.
And now you have two Anna Altizers, because you have two Annas in there.
Oh, yeah, look at that. It's all good. They closed today at 10 o'clock, 1 hour ago.
More like 45 minutes.
All right, so let's get on through this thing. So the term, obviously, start date, end date, right? You can't have a valid contract in Virginia without a start date and an end date. So very important. Sale price, what do you anticipate or what do you want to list the property for? So in this case, we said 375, which, you know, honestly, I felt like was a little bit of a stretch. Ended up selling for more than that. So crazy market, crazy market. This box right here, so at the bottom of paragraph 3, it talks about whether or not you want to promote or advertise seller concessions or seller contributions. I have always put 0 there. And so the way I've interpreted that is, do you want to advertise or promote the seller is willing to pay closing costs? And so, you know, I have never taken that position, but it is negotiable. So you might want to talk to your seller about that. But if we read the sentence, it says seller authorizes listing firm to disclose seller's willingness to pay seller's contributions and agrees to pay seller contributions in an amount not to exceed X number of dollars. I've always put 0 in that box because it'll come up at some point. It is negotiable. And so this doesn't obligate us or prevent us from making a concession. It just says we don't want to disclose or advertise our concessions.
So that is for closing costs only. That's all that.
No, not it. Well, So we use the term closing costs very broadly, right? But what this is referring to is a seller contribution of any kind. And so maybe it's not closing costs. Maybe it's, $1,000 carpet allowance. Maybe it's $500 to replace a light fixture. Any kind of a seller contribution, including and not to eliminate closing costs. Yeah, so all of those things. Seller authorization. Listing firms shall be bound by the rules and regulations of REIN with respect to the sale of the property. So listing data and photos. We know that REIN is very, very strict when it comes to our dates and our photos. We have to list every property with at least one photo, unless it's land. And so that at the very minimum is something that you should expect to have ready before you put this listing in. And so the way we've done it normally is we'll go ahead and schedule our photography to be done prior to our expected list date. That way we can get our professional pictures back in hand and ready to go on the day that we intend to ask Stacia to put this listing into the MLS so that it can all go in together. We know too that REIN forbids us from promoting any property that is not yet in REIN available for sale. They do not allow coming soons, and they will write your ass up if they catch you or if someone turns you in, which we believe has happened recently. So, and cooperation. Cooperation simply means that by signing this, the listing firm agrees to cooperate with selling firms or other REIN members. And so while this is in general, has more to do, I think, with the relationship between the firm and REIN than it does our client and REIN. So it's basically a disclosure of the rules that we have to abide by when being a member of REIN. Signage. Only for sale signs of listing firm may be placed on a property listed in REIN. So just, you can tell the seller, you can't, according to the regulations of REIN, you're not allowed to put out your own for sale sign. So it's going to be a Long and Foster sign in this case. And that's the one that we'll go with. So,
Hey, Jason,
yes,
okay, advertising. Can you
Yes.
go back to that a little bit?
Yeah.
So if the client does, you know where I'm going, right?
yeah,
If the client says, I don't want you to advertise, no signs on my front yard, my backyard, in my window. So we would indicate that under B, correct?
no, we can certainly follow that guidance, but we do not need to make a written note of that expressly, although you could. You could write in here, seller has requested no signs on the property, because that may provide them with a peace of mind for whatever their own reasoning is for making that decision. We could certainly appease them by writing it in here so they can see it, but it's not required either.
Thank you.
Thank you. Offer to purchase. So paragraph number 5 talks about disclosing whether or not it's the seller giving you, the listing agent, permission or not giving you permission to divulge to other agents, if asked, the existence of other offers. So for example, if they don't ask you, even if you are authorized, you don't have to say, yeah, there are multiple offers, right? But if you are authorized and they do ask, then I think it is incumbent upon us to let them know, yes, in fact, there are other offers. Sometimes they'll ask you, are any of the offers with your firm? especially in a hyper competitive market like now, because there is a unique advantage to having an in-house deal, right? Because that firm then has more control over the entire commission, right? And so maybe there's an incentive for that one firm to tinker with or reduce the commission, saving their clients some money, but keeping the entire pie in-house under one umbrella. And so you, as an outsider agent, an agent with a different firm, might like to know, do you have other offers? If yes, are any of them with your firm? Right? Just because I think that's the kind of information that you would like to have if you're trying to write a super competitive offer. And you might want to explain to your buyer that, hey, they have another offer, it's with their firm, which gives them more control over the commission being paid in this case. So you might want to, really, really put your best foot forward here if you want any hope of securing this property. But that's purchase agreement. So default, paragraph 6, should seller refuse to execute such purchase agreement, default in the performance of such purchase agreement, default under the terms and conditions of this agreement, or intentionally interfere with the listing firm's efforts to sell the property. So this would be a good one for you, Linda, right? So if that lady would have intentionally interfered with our ability to promote and sell the property, the listing firm shall have the right to terminate this agreement and pursue any and all rights available at law as such, or as a result of such default. So, and I kind of felt like, you were going down a road where, that lady was trying to put so many restrictions in place. It's just, what if we had listed the property and then she would never make it available for showing, right? Well, this paragraph gives us, the listing firm, the right to terminate this agreement and pursue any legal remedy or ramification, given by the terms of this contract. Of course, see an attorney for more information.
So the example that you're going about for Linda was a seller was making it
Yeah.
hard for her to market the property.
Yeah. And so we didn't actually end up listing the property, but had we listed it, and she wanted 72 hours and she wanted no sign in the yard, and she doesn't necessarily want to move, so maybe she wouldn't even make it convenient for us to show the property or to try to sell the property, or maybe she wouldn't review or accept any offers on the property. Well, if that's the case, then we have the right to terminate this listing agreement and say, you know what, we're not working with you anymore. And oh, by the way, we're sending this to our attorney for review because we feel like, you've wasted a lot of our time at this point.
Yeah, it was high maintenance, very high maintenance. It was handcuff maintenance.
Exactly. Yep. So paragraph 7, lockbox. Seller does or does not authorize the listing firm to use a super key box or other RAIN authorized key box. So you know how a lot of times you'll see that in the listing, it'll disclose whether or not it's a RAIN super key or it's a VPAR key or a Williamsburg key, or sometimes it says other. And that other is generally a combination box. And there may be, many reasons for that. The most common reason is probably because, the agent either hasn't or doesn't want to go to RAIN and get a box. So I can't blame them because RAIN is very, very strict with their boxes. So I can't blame them. So some agents prefer to use a combination box. Personally, I prefer to use the electronic box because there's an electronic record of who's visited the property. But that's not, you're free to use whatever you like. You just want to indicate it in the listing, what type of box is at the property.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
Electronic box, where do you get those?
RAIN.
Ah.
Yeah, the blue ones. That's what
Yeah,
I mean.
got you.
That's what I mean by electronic. Yeah. Paragraph
Same
8. Representations, warranties, and agreements. So we're all familiar, I think, with the Virginia Residential Property Disclosure Act. That was a big part of Principles of Real Estate class. We all know about the Lead-Based Paint Disclosure Act. Homes built prior to 1978 may contain lead-based paint, and so we have to make that disclosure. And so we're going to identify with the was or was not checkboxes here. Was the property built prior to 78 or not? If it was, then we need to make that disclosure, and there's an addendum that goes along with our listing package that discloses whether or not the seller has any knowledge or reports of lead-based paint being on the property. Paragraph 8C goes into condo, resale, new construction, and conversions. So if it is a condo, if it's the resale of a condo, obviously we need to identify that. If it's not, we're going to check NA, and in this case, obviously it was not. But there are certain requirements for condos that I think most of us have become familiar with, such as the condo docs, right? So usually if you have a condo, you have a monthly membership fee for being a part of this community or this association, and there's a fee associated with that. So we have to disclose that fee. So sometimes there's a cost to obtain that condominium resale disclosure package. And so the seller can either order it themselves, or they can allow you or the listing firm, you as their agent, their listing agent, to order that disclosure package on their behalf. And so I always check does. So I always take that responsibility on myself, even though I don't have to. But I want to make sure that the condo pack or the condo docs are ordered at what I feel like is the appropriate time. So in this case, maybe we would have checked does. But if you've been specifically told, oh, no, I'll go ahead and order the condo docs when the time arrives, then you would check does not. And then D, property owners association, exact same thing. So you have a condo association, you also have a property owners association, which we use interchangeably with the term homeowners association. And so whether or not it's a homeowners association or a property owners association, you'll see POA, you'll see HOA, you'll see COA for condo. They're all basically the same, and they generally have fees associated with being a part of that community, which have to be disclosed. Therefore, there is a disclosure package that has to be ordered by someone from the community. And so again, the seller does or does not authorize the listing firm. And you know what? I just recognized. So technically, I made a mistake on this paperwork because there was a homeowners association at this property, and you can see clearly that I had checked the box NA. So yeah, we're not going to jail, right? Nothing bad happened, thank God, knock on wood. But we do the best we can, and I know it's hard to believe, but we're not.
Perfect agent makes a mistake.
We're not all perfect.
Hey, Jason, it
Yes.
also says it has to be done within 14 days. What is it?
Yeah.
Seller-
What it says is the package has to be delivered within 14 days of a written request and payment. So normally, you can pretty much ignore that because I've never seen a situation where it took longer than that. And the payment is, most of the time, the payment doesn't happen until closing. So for example, when we order HOA, POA, or COA docs, we normally will do it through a company called HomeWiseDocs.com. You can go there and check it out. Not all associations belong to HomeWise, but most of them do, thank goodness, because they make it very convenient. And they simply bill the title company. You provide them with the title company's information, and they will send a bill for this package to the title company to be paid at closing. And that could be, weeks away, many weeks away. Or some communities require payment up front. And so then in that event, you know, you could either pay it yourself, expecting to be reimbursed by your seller, which I've done, or you could tell the seller, hey, you know, you got to pay this $265 for them to release the POA package, which is required, and get your seller to carry a check over to the office or mail a check or something. But most of the time it's paid at closing. Co-op. Oh, this is a paragraph I don't really have a lot of experience with. Mike Gray. I have never ever been involved in a co-op transaction.
Actually, I like co-ops a lot.
Really?
I do.
Can you tell me why?
Lots of reasons, actually. The biggest reason is, especially for a buyer, they pretty much know what their monthly payment is going to be, because with a co-op, your co-op fee a lot of times is anywhere between $500 and $650 a month. But what it includes water, sewer, trash pickup, ground maintenance, master policy insurance. Sometimes it will include cable as well, and heat. So it includes a lot.
Wow.
The only place that you're really going to find co-ops in this area is Norfolk and like Ghent. And then on Hampton Boulevard, just north of ODU,
Right across
Right.
from the yacht club.
near the Norfolk Yacht and Country Club. Those are co-ops. And there's only some banks that do co-ops. Not all banks finance a co-op. But a co-op is basically a 1920s, 1930s condo. You don't own the unit, you own shares of stock in the company that owns the building. But in return, you live in the unit. But so when you sell, you're selling your stock in the company. But I love co-ops. And the only other difference with the co-op is your buyer has to go before the co-op board. And so they interview you and what they want. And the good thing about co-ops too is you don't, typically the price is a little bit lower than a condo. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. And they're more owner occupants. A lot of times they don't allow them to be sublet or anything like that, which is kind of nice because it's a lot quieter of a building. They're better managed. And a lot of co-ops have garages, which in Norfolk is rare to find a garage, especially with a condo. And a lot of them do have garages, which is nice. But your buyer has to go before the co-op board, they interview them, and then when they pass that, then they do the co-op documents. But I love co-ops. I've sold probably 20 of them at least.
Wow. That is so cool. Yeah.
What type of person is. And like for me, a lot of mine, I sold a lot of co-ops to medical students. So I said, you know, when you get in there, tell them you're going to medical school, you're quiet, you like to read, you like to study, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a quiet person.
Wow.
They'll start talking. You know, if you say you're in a band, forget it. You're not getting the co-op. So you want them to think you're a quiet person.
We
But that's
had
what they
one
look
listed
for.
last year. And an oceanfront agent sold it.
That's
I
awesome.
love co-ops.
Yes.
I do.
Does prosperity finance co-ops?
And a lot of times, in those older buildings like in Ghent, especially ones on Hampton Boulevard, the rooms are enormous and they have big garages. I mean, I would pick a co-op over a condo any day. And they're
Hey.
usually cheaper.
I had no idea. Wow.
I like them a lot.
Okay.
College
really
Exeter had
interesting.
one last year.
What kind of timeline? Can you still buy one of these things in 30, 45 days?
45 days, yeah,
They're gonna, because you gotta schedule a meeting or an interview with the board.
right.
All right. How many people are on like a board? I mean, is it like 6 people? or
Users 3 or 4 people.
3 or 4?
Mhm.
Okay. That is interesting.
It's pretty
Yeah.
informal, but it's kind of nice because you regulate who you're picking who's going to be living
In
in
this
your
case, you
building.
do get to pick your neighbors.
You really do it. It's kind of nice.
That's cool.
I like
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
it.
Paragraph F, sewage and septic. So here again, we're going to identify whether or not there's a septic on the property. There may or may not be. But to our knowledge, in this case, the property is not served by an on-site septic system, and we feel confident about that because of the proximity of this neighborhood to the main road and, you know, when it was built and that sort of thing. So In this case, there was not, but we've talked about that whole septic thing before, whether it is or is not subject to a waiver, and you may not necessarily know if it is or if it isn't. And so if you're at a property, you're listing a property that does have a septic because the seller told you so, they should also be able to tell you whether or not there is a septic on site that has been granted a waiver, which is not transferable to the buyer. And that's the big thing, right? So the seller may have a waiver for this septic that's still on the property. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe, it's doesn't meet code or the requirements anymore. Maybe this septic was installed when this was a 2-bedroom home, but now it's a 4-bedroom home. And so they were granted a waiver by the county, but that waiver is non-transferable to the buyer. The buyer will have to upgrade that septic to meet code for a 4-bedroom home now, right? And so that may be one of the scenarios that you would run into if you're in, Suffolk or Surrey or Isle of Wight, where we have a lot of septic systems. So that knowledge should come to you by way of the seller. If they don't tell you, you're not going to go to the county and do any research on the septic system. And you may find out at the last minute it's going to screw everything up. So be sure to ask your client the question. Obviously there's a septic here. Is this a septic that's been granted a waiver or not? It's worth asking. G, CDIF and Chapter 7. So the CDIF is an additional disclosure, which we'll go through here in a few minutes. But it just says that the seller acknowledges receipt of the RAIN Consumer Disclosure Information Form, i.e. CDIF, Consumer Disclosure Information Form. I think it's like 7 pages, 6 or 7 pages, and summary of rights and obligations. So this is just them acknowledging receipt of these forms that are also included as part of our standard listing package. Warranty, release, and indemnification. Seller represents and warrants the accuracy of all information provided by seller to listing firm concerning the property, including without limitation all information which may have been given or may be given in the future, and expressly including the statements made in the listing data form and input. So we are protected from publishing or publicizing or promoting incorrect information. The seller is taking on that liability. And that's what this does. This protects us in the event that, we've mischaracterized this property. Maybe we said there's a septic on the property that's not subject to a waiver. Well, maybe it actually was subject to a waiver. And so we're protected, we're insulated by paragraph H. Wood destroying insect infestation inspection report. So most loans require termite and moisture inspection. However, I know conventional loan does not require termite and moisture inspection. And, sometimes, maybe, depending on the circumstances, it would behoove the buyer to waive the termite and moisture inspection. If, and again, it's case by case, right? Nothing we say is going to apply in every situation. And that's why there's so many damn pieces of paper, right? They write these things so that they can fit many, many, many different scenarios. General warranty deed, except as otherwise provided, seller covenants to convey the property to the prospective buyer by general warranty deed, free of all encumbrances, tenancies, and liens for taxes or other matters of any type, right? So this is something we all had to learn about in principles of real estate class, is the types of deeds. General warranty deed is the best, right? It is the one that is in fact free of all encumbrances and tenancies and liens and that sort of thing. And so the seller is promising to deliver general warranty deed to the buyer in this paragraph. Seller representations, again, Seller represents that the seller has the right to transfer the property without obtaining consent or approval of another party. With a couple of exceptions, right? Because if this is a short sale, which we used to see a lot of, then the seller technically has to get permission from their mortgage company to sell the property for less than the mortgage company is owed. And that's why it's referred to as selling short, because the seller may owe 250, but the market will only bring 200 now for this property. So you're asking, the seller is asking their mortgage company to take 200 instead of the 250 that's owed. That is a short sale. There could also be other situations. There could be, maybe there's a court involved that has to, maybe they file bankruptcy. And so, you can't sell that property without getting permission from the bankruptcy court. Or maybe it's part of a divorce proceeding, right? And so those assets have to be accounted for and split between, maybe the husband and wife or whatever the circumstance is there. And so there's a court that's involved in this process. So if those two scenarios are in fact present, then we have to identify those here by checking these boxes. So the first one is for short sale. The second one might be for a court, a bankruptcy, other third party approval. Then pending building or zoning violations. The seller has or does not have actual knowledge that a property is pending enforcement actions pursuant to the Uniform Statewide Building Code. Pretty self-explanatory. If the seller knows that he's got a violation notice from the county, he needs to disclose that because obviously that violation will transfer over to the buyer. Property previously used to manufacture methamphetamines. If the seller knows, the seller has to disclose. My guess is, hopefully, most properties were not. And so the seller does not have actual knowledge that the property was previously used to manufacture methamphetamines. And two, has not been cleaned up in accordance with state guidelines.
There is a disclosure form they have to sign in addition to that.
Yep. So. FERPTA. So this is a relatively new paragraph. Gosh, I don't know, 3-4 years, maybe 5 years. Except as noted below, seller represents and warrants that seller is not a non-resident alien, foreign estate, foreign trust, foreign partnership, or foreign corporation, as those terms are defined in the Internal Revenue Code and applicable United States Treasury regulations, including Internal Revenue Code sections 1445 and 1446. So if they are one of these identified classes, then they may be subject to additional taxation or additional regulation for, we hear a lot about, the Chinese are buying up a lot of property in the United States as it's a good investment. And so if they went to sell one of these, then they may be subject to additional regulations as defined by the IRS in code section 1445, 1446. So I have never personally had any experience with this paragraph, but you might. So this is a good one. Audio and video recording. Seller acknowledges that the unauthorized recording or transmitting of audio or video may result in the violation of state and or federal wiretapping laws. Seller agrees to indemnify and hold agent, listing firm, selling firm, and REIN harmless from and against any and all damage, liability, expense of any kind or nature whatsoever arising from any recording or transmitting of the property caused by seller. In addition, blah, 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 blah. So I have had sellers with recording devices in their homes, and I tell them, yeah, you really, to watch them is kind of weird, but you're really not supposed to listen to them, and you certainly aren't allowed to record what it is they say. And my sellers are like, F that, it's my house. So, so they do it anyway. And it was so funny. I had a seller calling me one time, wow, literally while his house is being shown. And I'm on the phone with him. He's watching them in his house talking about that guy needs to get his ass out of my recliner. And then one of the home buyers, one of the shoppers said, I wonder where, you know, the electric panel or the water heater is or something like that. And he's telling me to tell them where it's at. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And you shouldn't be listening to them. So always assume you're being watched and listened to.
Jason,
Visiting
how do you get
property.
around the Ring doorbell then? Because that's automatically recorded.
Absolutely.
Well, can I just tell you really quickly? I had an agent one time in my neighborhood. I was selling my neighbor's house and the agent was right near the Ring doorbell. She rang it. They didn't come to the door. She was doing the lockbox. And she says to her clients, hey, listen, I just heard from somebody in this neighborhood that the family owning this house is building in the neighborhood. So they have to sell. So we're going to lowball their offer. And sure enough, my client called me and said, hey, you're getting a offer later today, and it's going to be a lowball offer. So I said to my client, I said, well, were you at the house when the people got there? She goes, no, the agent talked while she rung the Ring doorbell, and it recorded everything.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I knew what was coming my way, and I didn't have the heart to tell the girl, but we did negotiate and we did get a good offer, but she wasn't very nice. So I didn't bother to tell her about her Ring doorbell incident.
That is,
She'll figure it out.
that's just a
Jason.
great reminder. You got to be careful not to give away your negotiation strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
Linda,
Hey, Jason,
Yeah.
I have shown a home that had all the video cameras in it, and before I got into the house, I tell my clients, listen, don't say anything that you don't want the owner to hear, because it
That's
can be recorded.
Right.
That's right.
That's a good idea.
Exactly right. Miscellaneous is just that. This agreement shall be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, yada, yada, yada. Not a lot to take away from that. Broker agreement. The broker agreement is attached to and shall become part of this agreement. Other provisions. So maybe if you had some other provisions in accordance with the listing or other instructions, or maybe you wanted to say that the shed out back is not included, and you're going to write that in here, or it's not to convey, or something like that. You could use this blank space for pretty much anything that the seller gives you that might be an anomaly, unusual, or different.
So,
Yeah.
Jason, so could like the sellers that I was dealing with wanted to sell the house as is, so I would indicate that in this number 11, home
Yeah,
is
that would be fine. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You could write in there, seller intends to sell the home as is, where is, and make no repairs. Now, again, this is essentially with that saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? I think that's what Mike Tyson said. So again, this is not obligating. This is not an obligation from the seller to a potential buyer. This was their intention going in, but when they get an offer, that could change everything, right? So even though they say, I'm selling this house as is, when they get that $300,000 offer, they might be willing to replace that $5 light bulb, right? Which is not as is. So yeah, everybody's negotiable when there's real money on the line, I think. Okay, and so signature page. So that is, golly, it took 45 minutes to get through that. I'm sorry. So that is our standard listing agreement. It's only 6 pages, so it's pretty short. Probably could have moved through it a little bit faster than that, but let's go back now and take a look at our exclusive right to sell agreement. And so I'm going to hit save and close, and that's going to take us back to our list of forms, because that's just the way I like to do it. So the standard agent exclusive right to sell, this is the one that talks about the relationship between the broker and the client. This is the one that's very similar to the exclusive right to represent buyer agreement, right? So this is the contract, if you will, between Long and Foster and the client. Not you, but the broker, Long and Foster, and the client. And that's why, you know, if you leave a brokerage, you know, depending on who your broker is, a lot of the times, those listings and or contracts belong to the broker and not you, the agent. Even if it's your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, it doesn't matter. So keep that in mind.
Can I say one thing about this form?
Yes,
So if you and your buyer's agent come to an agreement and neglect to turn in a brokerage fee notice, Sage Title, I don't know about any other company, will use this as the commission agreement for you guys to get paid. So make sure that you fill in all the blocks correctly.
got it. Got it. So, starting at the top, we obviously identify the parties to the sale. In this case, we've got Anna and Anna. The listing firm will be Long and Foster, and we've identified then the physical or the street address of the property. Paragraph 1 is simply brokerage relationship. Listing firm shall act as a seller's standard agent, which is the most strict, right? When we were learning about the different types of agency, we know that standard agent is like general warranty deed in the sense that it encompasses all of those listing activities or agent duties. A standard agent is a licensee who acts for or represents a seller as a client in an agency relationship and performs the obligations described below and any additional obligations agreed to in the agreement. The obligations described below are set forth in blah, 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 Code of Virginia, 1950, yada, yada, yada. All right, and so then you just would read through this, and this will identify the minimum duties that you expect to provide that client, right? The minimum. There may be more, but this is the minimum that you are charged with when your client signs this agreement. Dual agency disclosure, we don't see it very often. We try to avoid it where possible. There are, creative ways to avoid it. A great way to avoid it is simply to refer the other side of a deal to an in-office agent. That gives us two things. It gives us a, in-house deal, which I think is better for the office. It gives us more control over the money so that if we need to help the buyer or help the seller somehow, we have more flexibility in accomplishing that. And then the other way that we can avoid the term dual agency is by representing one party and helping the other party as unrepresented. And so while technically you are providing them with the paperwork and walking them through the process, you do not have an agency relationship with that other party. And they have signed the disclosure of unrepresented party agreement. There's a disclosure specifically for that incident. And so that's generally what we see. So if you have the trust of two people, buyer, seller, and you can be 100% honest, ethical, and transparent with both of them, then maybe dual agency would come into play. But it's a very fine line to walk, and I would encourage you guys to try to avoid it when possible. Although those checks are really nice.
You get paid from the unrepresented side.
Yes, yeah.
Still get-
You're still going to get your commission. Yeah, so well, it depends, right? It depends if if the property is already listed and then you found a buyer, because if that's the case, then yes, you already have this 6% listing commission that's been agreed to by the seller, right? And so that's already out there, and this property is being marketed to the public. And then all of a sudden, you know, you get a call from one of your friends on Facebook says, hey, I want to buy that house you have listed, right? So now there's already a 6% commission on the table. Yes, that entire commission could come to Long and Foster in this example. But if you're trying to put a deal together that doesn't currently exist, maybe it is a for sale by owner, for example. Well, for sale by owner is not going to pay out a 6% commission just because you have a buyer, right? And so if you're trying to put a deal together, then I think it's in everyone's best interest to do that for less than a standard listing commission. You know, maybe that's 3, maybe that's 4, maybe it's whatever you feel like you can negotiate for yourself. But yeah, you should definitely, for facilitating the transaction, even for the party that you don't technically represent through an agency agreement.
Uh-oh,
Oh,
here's Stacia again.
oh, hey. What you doing?
You paid the $295 on that one, correct?
No, actually, I saw it on the Alta and I just left it there.
But that's why it's not up there, right?
Right.
Okay, so normally when you guys get this form,
Yeah,
it'll say $295 plus.
yes.
Actually, it's the other way
Yeah, it's
around.
the other way around. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's $$ $295
That's
plus,
right.
and then there's a space for you to put the 5%.
That's right.
That $295 is the Long and Foster flat fee. It's charged on all commissions, less than 7%. Though you can charge it to anybody and everybody, it doesn't really matter. The only thing we can't charge it on are our buyers who have VA loans. If Jason was talking about doing a special commission, that's actually an option on the data input sheet, which I'm not sure Jason's gonna get to today. Or he might, I have no idea. But you can certainly write that at the bottom, just put a little asterisk and put, you know, and I'm gonna use Kyle as an example because he writes it on almost every single one of his deals. If Kyle lists and sells commission to be reduced to 4% or 5% or whatever it is
Right.
that, you know, the case is, he normally does 5% listings anyway, so he would drop it down to like 4.5 or 4, but you guys normally do 6% listings. And if you sold both sides, you would say drop it down to 5%. It gives I don't know, a couple $1,000 discount, so to speak.
Right.
Or if you use Jason's super duper VIP program that we don't usually talk about often, that's where you would also write it.
Yeah.
You know, put an asterisk. You can hand type it on there. There's a little text box.
Yeah.
And just say, you know, total commission, listing side commission minus 2% or $200 or whatever you guys, I think it's what, 1,500 max?
Yeah. So we could definitely put in a little asterisk right there and write back a credit to seller in this example, you know, of, you know, $500, you know, and call it a VIP credit or call it a friends and family credit, you know,
Now,
call it a
On
whatever.
the brokerage fee notice though, that you send to the title company, don't use those words credit, because then it jacks up our accounting department, because they're gonna look for that money that we don't have. So at the bottom of that brokerage fee notice, you would just put like whatever the selling side is plus whatever your specific dollar amount is. So if it's 3% plus 2,500, don't put 6% minus 1,500 if that's what you gave. It's too confusing to the title companies, and then it makes our accounting more complicated. And if you get hung up at that issue, just come see me.
You said it's a 7% commission, we don't charge.
We don't have to charge a $295. So what happens is say you don't collect that $295 at closing, and it's a 7% commission, Long and Foster won't hunt you down.
Good
But
to
if you
know.
Don't charge it,
If you don't charge it on anything less than 7, Long and Foster will take it out of your commission. Just remember that, they like their $2.95.
Yep, yep, yep.
Technology fee.
I mean, it kind of pays for, you know, your website maintenance and
I tried really hard to get them to give that to me.
I
Wouldn't do it.
know, it also pays for the supplies you guys use, because a lot of that comes from, you know, the paper that y'all like eat or something. I don't know, we go through paper like some of these.
All right, gang, it is 11:58. I've kept you for an entire hour. Thank you for hanging out with me. I really, really appreciate it. We can pick up the rest of these forms at a later date, but hopefully there was something here to offer some clarification or additional support. Does anybody have any, last minute questions or something they want me to hit before we sign off for today?
Hey, Jason, this is a great class. Thanks.
Yes,
Oh,
very
thank
good.
you. Thank you. You're a great student. Thank you. Very cool. All right, we'll see you guys.
Bye.
Oh, wait.
I have a joke.
A joke.
So, what did Chris Rock wake up on his face with yesterday?
What did Chris Rock wake up with
On his
on
face.
his face yesterday?
Prince. Prince.
Fresh Prince.
Fresh
Prince.
Prince.
I told you, Prince.
So good. So good. Oh, all right, guys. We'll see you later.